Well, good evening, Democrats. I know you all are wondering, why are you afraid to climb up there? But I have to remind you that on the very last week of the legislative session in May of last year, the last week, I fell in the State House and I fractured my shoulder in 3 places, and I'm still recovering from it with therapy. So please understand that we do have to be careful. I'm just pleased to be here. Greenville is changing so much, and our state is changing so much. And many of you may be somewhat new to Greenville, or perhaps you have not kept up with the leadership from the African American community. But I have to tell you that I have served in Greenville County, and I often remind us Democrats of that. I was in the civil rights movement back in the 60s. I was locked up several times a block down on the corner of Washington, fighting to make Greenville the type of place it is today, a welcoming place for everybody. And when I stand before Democrats, I know who you are, and I know what you as Democrats stand for. And I want to remind you that for us to continue making progress, and I can tell you, in my past service, I served on the school board here in Greenville for 16 long years, fighting for children, fighting for teachers, fighting for the schools that needed to be upgraded. And when I went down to Columbia, I have been fighting for various issues that I can't really go into now due to the lack of time. But I will tell you this, we can make all the speeches we want, but until we are ready to really hit the ground running and appeal where it really hurts the Republicans, and that is in numbers, until we are willing to go down to Columbia and lobby and press for the legislation that we want and we need, nothing is going to happen. We can stay in dreamland all we want to, but nothing is going to happen until we show up in Columbia with placards such as what you have here today, because the only thing that appeals to them is numbers. We go back to Columbia on Tuesday, the 8th of next week. And I'm very happy to say that I refiled 11 very important bills. And I have 5 new bills that impact on the growth of this state. And when we talk about growth, we can't leave people behind. And that is why I always appeal to the good people, because even back in the civil rights movement, we had good people. Even during the time of enslavement, we had good people who supported the Underground Railroad. And without conscientious good people, we will continue to leave people behind. And I want you to think about that, because right here in Greenville County, a lot of people, and we don't like to talk about it, do we? A lot of people are being left behind. A lot of people are being displaced and pushed out. We have over 100 children living in motels in Greenville County. The school bus goes to the motel to pick these kids up. And the school bus brings those kids after school back to these crummy motels. And it's all because of the displacement caused by regentrification. I believe in growth. I love it when I see the beauty of this community, but we don't have to leave people behind to do that. So I'm just appealing, thank you, I'm appealing to those of you who are good Democrats of conscience, because going back to the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, we had Democrats who cared about people. And the bills that are down in Columbia now are great bills. And with your help and with your support, those bills can become law. I encourage you, when you get home, to go to the South Carolina House of Representatives website. And you just Google all the way down until you see the representatives from Greenville, and you'll see me right on that post. Click on Bill Sponsored, and all of those bills will pop up. The school to jail pipeline bill is really a terrible bill that has incriminated so many of our young people for what? Non-serious offenses. We have the ban the box bill that would take off an employment application whether or not a person has ever been arrested, and it could have been for a bad check, a one-time thing. But that's another bill that I have. We have a bill that deals with the confidentiality clause that affects women who are victims of sexual abuse. Women whose identity is made public, and they have to deal with being tracked down by offenders. It's a lot of bills. If I went through them all, I'd be here until 11 o'clock. So I just encourage you to do what you need to do. I want to just mention one other thing. The first year when I was down in Columbia, we were fighting for the Affordable Care Act. And I sit in a delegation of Republicans, Chandra Dillard and I. We're just surrounded by all the Republicans in our House district. And we begged and pleaded with them to vote for the Affordable Care Act, which they did not do. Now, when I came back to Greenville after that effort failed, there was a young man that worked in a volunteer program. I may have told some of you about this before. But he came down with a bad cold. And because he did not have health insurance, he didn't go to the hospital until he was coughing up blood. He had no insurance at all. And by the time he got to the emergency room, he was placed in an induced coma, and he later passed on. Wonderful young man, excellent volunteer. And it haunts me because I can't help but think that had he had that expanded version of Medicaid, that boy might be right here today, serving people and doing things. So this is why we really need to stand up for what is right. Amen. And the way you stand up is do what those other folk do, because they're in Columbia. That's right. Anytime they want some bill that's a part of the Republican agenda, those halls are packed. And until we're able and willing to fight for what we want, things won't happen. And I hate to say it, but this country will end up being a place that's not fit for anybody to live in. If we continue, this country will not be fit for any of us, and our children and grandchildren will look at us and say, why didn't you do something? So we have a chance now. A window is open for us to do. So thank you so much. And may God bless you. Keep me in your prayers as I move forward.